My name is Beatrice Langley. I'm 38 years old, and I've always believed that if something is broken, there's a reason. You find it, you fix it, you move on. That's how I've lived my life. I work in logistics, contracts, operations, long-term planning, nothing flashy. I like things that make sense. Quiet mornings, clean schedules, coffee without sugar. I thought my relationship worked the same way. I was wrong. Daniel and I had been together 6 years. We weren't married, but we lived like we were. Shared routines, shared bills, shared weekends. The house, though, that was mine. Bought it 2 years before I met him. I never made a big deal about that. Love isn't supposed to be transactional. That Saturday, I was under the house, rerouting a drain pipe in the laundry room crawl space. Dirt on my jeans, headlamp on, tools spread out beside me. There's an old vent shaft that runs straight up into the guest room closet. Normally, it's nothing. But sound carries in strange ways. I heard Daniel's voice first, relaxed, amused. Then his mother laughed. Something about the tone made my hands stop moving. "She's not going to fight you on anything," Daniel said. "Beatrice hates conflict. She'll just want it over." His mother replied, "That's a blessing. Women like her always think being nice will protect them." They laughed again. My chest went tight, not with anger, yet, but with clarity. "I've already looked into it," Daniel continued. "If I leave first, I can push for compensation. She makes more than enough. And the house, well, she won't want a legal mess." His mother lowered her voice. "She'll probably apologize for making it awkward." I crouched there, still gripping the wrench, listening to my boyfriend calmly plan how to dismantle my life like a business exit strategy. They talked about timing, about how I was predictable, about how someone like me shouldn't waste their best years propping up a man who felt stuck. They never mentioned love. I stayed there another 15 minutes after they stopped talking, long enough for the shock to harden into something colder. That night, Daniel kissed my cheek and handed me a glass of wine, acted normal, sat beside me on the couch, texted someone with a smile that didn't belong to me. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I made a decision. By Monday morning, I had a lawyer, and from that moment on, I stopped reacting and started preparing. The first thing I learned about betrayal is that it doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with a quiet kiss on the cheek and a glass of wine placed into your hand by the same person who just called you weak behind your back. On Monday, I went to work like nothing happened. Same commute, same parking spot, same polite smile at the receptionist. I answered emails, reviewed contracts, signed off on a shipment schedule. I even joined a Zoom meeting and nodded at the right moments like my chest wasn't full of broken glass. Because if Daniel thought I was unaware, he would keep getting comfortable. And comfort makes people sloppy. At 11:45 a.m., I stepped out for lunch and drove across town to a small law firm with no billboard, no flashing sign, no loud advertisements promising revenge, just a plain glass door and a receptionist with calm eyes. My attorney's name was Marianne Wexler. She was the kind of woman whose voice didn't rise unless she wanted it to. Her handshake was firm, and her desk was so clean it looked unused. She didn't waste time with sympathy. She asked questions. "How long have you owned the house?" 2 years before him. "Any joint title?" "No." "Any shared mortgage?" "Only my name." "Joint accounts?" "One, mostly for bills." She listened while I told her what I heard in the crawl space. She didn't blink once. "You overheard intent," she said. "And intent is a warning, but warning isn't proof. If you want to protect yourself, you need documentation." Quietly, I swallowed. "What do I do?" "You control the tempo," she replied, sliding a legal pad toward me. "If he's planning an exit, you don't chase him. You let him walk into paperwork." I stared at the blank page. For the first time since Saturday, my hands stopped shaking. Not because I wasn't afraid, but because I had a direction. Marianne gave me a checklist. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just practical, like she was walking me through a controlled detonation. Freeze or separate joint finances legally. Catalog assets purchased before the relationship. Document any unusual spending. Watch for undisclosed accounts. Keep your behavior consistent. Don't trigger him into changing strategies. "Don't start a war," she said. "Just stop being defenseless." That afternoon, I went back to work, finished my day, and drove home. Daniel's car was already in the driveway. He greeted me like always. "Hey, B," he said, leaning in to kiss me. "Long day?" I let him. "Normal day," I replied. He didn't hear the difference. That night, I cooked dinner. Stir-fry, rice, the same meal I made when we were trying to be healthy and pretending we were a team. He ate and scrolled his phone. "Mom says hi," he said casually. I kept my face neutral. "Tell her hi back." He looked up for half a second, searching for something. Guilt, maybe, or suspicion. Then he smiled and went back to scrolling. After dinner, while he showered, he left his phone on the couch. I didn't touch it. Not because I didn't want to, because I didn't need to. People like Daniel didn't hide the truth. They hid it behind confidence, assuming you'd never question anything. I walked into my home office instead and opened my laptop. First, the joint account. I pulled up statements going back 6 months. And there it was. Small withdrawals. Not huge, not flashy, just consistent. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. Transfers that didn't match bills. Venmo payments labeled things like Guy's Weekend, Loan Repayment, Emergency. Emergency. I almost laughed. Because if you're planning to leave someone, you always invent an emergency to justify stealing without calling it stealing. I started a folder. Screenshots, PDFs, dates, notes. Then I checked the credit card, our shared one. New purchases I hadn't seen in the house. A $250 duffel bag, a set of luggage tags, a new tablet. My fingers tightened on the mouse. Daniel didn't pack for vacations. Daniel packed for exits. The next morning, I went to the bank. I didn't close the account. Marianne told me not to make aggressive moves too early. Instead, I opened a new account in my name only, rerouted my paycheck, and moved my personal savings. Then I changed autopay. Utilities, insurance, internet, everything that had been quietly draining my money while Daniel played partner. By the time I got home that evening, Daniel was already in the kitchen, humming, as if he lived in a world where consequences didn't exist yet. He leaned on the counter. "We should probably go over the garage this weekend," he said. "Get rid of stuff we don't need, like declutter." I nodded, stirring my tea. "Sure," I said, "whatever you think." The truth was, I had already started. That night, after he fell asleep, I walked through my own house like I was seeing it for the first time. The couch I bought before him. The dining table my father helped me move in. The tool chest in the garage. The deed paperwork I kept in a fireproof lockbox. I opened the lockbox. There it was, my name, alone, on the title. I stared at it longer than I needed to, feeling a strange thing bloom in my chest. Not triumph, not revenge, relief. Because Daniel and his mother had made a mistake. They assumed kindness meant weakness. But kindness is just how I treat people. It isn't the same thing as how I protect myself. The next day, I met with Marianne again. I brought receipts, screenshots, bank statements. She skimmed them quickly, then paused at a transfer. "This," she said, tapping the page, "is not random. This is a pattern. He's building a safety net." "He thinks I won't notice," I murmured. Marianne's mouth curved slightly. "That's the advantage. He's planning like you're asleep." She slid another document toward me. "Next step, we request a forensic accounting review, quietly. If he has an old account, a hidden account, a credit line, this will flush it out." A coldness moved through me. Because this wasn't just Daniel being unhappy. This was Daniel planning to profit from me. And the worst part? He still came home every night and kissed me like he wasn't carving up my future behind my back. That weekend, Daniel invited his sister over. She brought wine, laughed too loudly, complimented my house like it was already his. And Daniel, my boyfriend, the man I fed, supported, and trusted, sat there smiling like he was already gone. At one point, his sister leaned close to me and said, almost sweetly, "You know, B, Daniel's always said you're easy to live with." Easy. The word hit me like a slap, because I could hear what it really meant. Easy to take from, easy to outmaneuver, easy to leave. I smiled politely. "Yeah," I said, "I try." Daniel watched me from across the room, his eyes warm, his grin relaxed. He thought I was playing the role. He didn't know the role had changed. Because while he was getting comfortable, I was building the trap. And the first sign it was working came 2 days later, at the grocery store. Daniel texted me. "Card got declined. Did you forget to pay it?" I stared at the message, feeling nothing but calm. I typed back, "That's weird. Must be fraud. I'll look into it." Then I screenshotted it. Because if he was going to play dumb, I would let him. That night, he came home tense, irritation hiding behind his smile. "Any update?" he asked, too casual. I shrugged. "Bank's slow. Might take a day." He exhaled, annoyed. Then, like an actor catching himself, he softened his voice. "Babe, it's fine. Just let me know." And when he turned away, I saw it. That flash of worry, that tiny crack in his confidence. Because for the first time, something didn't go his way. I waited until he went to shower, then walked into the living room. His phone was on the couch again. Screen lit up. A message preview. From a saved contact name I didn't recognize at first. Then I saw it. Tessa. And underneath, he still doesn't know, right? My throat tightened. Tessa. Not his sister. Not his mom. A woman. And the heart emoji wasn't innocent. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to, because I finally understood something that made my blood run cold. Daniel wasn't just leaving me. He was leaving me to someone. And whoever Tessa was, she wasn't new. She was part of the plan. I sat down slowly, staring at the dark TV screen reflecting my own face. Still calm, still composed, but behind my ribs something shifted. The betrayal wasn't just strategic anymore. It was personal. And now I knew the trap needed to be bigger than paperwork. Because Daniel wasn't only trying to take my house, he was trying to erase me. Once you realize someone is lying to you, truly lying, not just omitting details but constructing an alternate reality, everything they do starts to sound rehearsed. Daniel became attentive, not loving, not apologetic. Attentive in the way someone becomes when they sense control slipping but don't yet know why. He started asking about my day again, started suggesting date nights, started touching my back in passing, like muscle memory instead of affection. I was thinking, he said one morning, stirring his coffee, we should plan something, just us. Reset a little. Reset. That word is always a tell. I smiled over my mug. Sure, that could be nice. And just like that, he relaxed. Because in Daniel's mind, this was the part where I softened, where I stayed predictable, where his story stayed clean. Meanwhile, Marianne's forensic accountant called me that afternoon. Quiet voice, no wasted words. We found it, he said. My fingers tightened around the phone. Found what? An account under his previous address. Opened 3 years ago. Active, small, but consistent deposits. Enough to build leverage without triggering alerts. 3 years. Which meant this didn't start when Daniel became unhappy. It started when he became strategic. How much? I asked. Enough to disqualify him from any claim of financial dependence, he replied, and enough to establish intent. I closed my eyes. Daniel didn't want to leave empty-handed. He wanted to leave ahead. That night, he came home carrying takeout like a peace offering. Thought I'd save you the trouble, he said, setting it on the counter. I thanked him. We ate on the couch, shoulder to shoulder, like we always had. He laughed at the right moments, told a story about work that I'd heard 3 times before. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it too fast, too carefully. I didn't look. I didn't have to. Because when someone thinks they're winning, they stop guarding their exits. Later, while he slept, I sat at the dining table with my laptop open, reviewing documents Marianne had sent. This wasn't a breakup. This was an eviction with consequences. Because unlike Daniel, I wasn't leaving. This was my house, my life, my foundation. And if he wanted out, he wasn't taking pieces of me with him. The next few days passed in an almost eerie calm. Daniel started packing slowly. Not openly, not obviously, just moving things. A jacket disappeared from the closet. Shoes shifted to the trunk of his car. Documents moved into his backpack. He didn't think I noticed. That was his second mistake. On Thursday, Marianne called again. We're ready when you are, she said. If you want to proceed, I suggest timing it publicly. Why publicly? I asked. Because people like him rely on narrative control, she replied. You take that away, he collapses. I thought of his mother, his sister, the way they spoke about me like I was a resource, not a person. I know exactly when, I said. Sunday. Family dinner. Daniel insisted on hosting every other week. He loved showing off the house, my house, to his family like proof he'd arrived somewhere. That week, he was especially enthusiastic. Mom's coming early, he said. She wants to help cook. Of course she did. Saturday night, Daniel poured wine and leaned against the counter. You know, he said lightly, whatever happens with us, I hope we can be adults about it. Whatever happens. I met his eyes. We will be, I said calmly. He smiled. That smug, confident smile of a man who thought he was already gone. Sunday morning, I vacuumed. Cooked. Set the table. Daniel watched me, amused. You're in a good mood, he said. Just being helpful, I replied. At 4:30, his family arrived. His mother, his sister, his brother-in-law. Laughter filled the house. Compliments about the food, about the space, about how lucky Daniel was. I played my part perfectly. At 5:12 p.m., the doorbell rang. Daniel frowned. Were you expecting someone? I shook my head. No. I stayed seated. He stood, irritated, and walked barefoot to the door. I heard the exchange clearly. Daniel Harris? Yes? You've been served. The silence that followed was thick enough to taste. Then the sound of paper being opened. A sharp inhale. His mother's voice floated from the dining room. What is it? Daniel walked back in slowly, the color draining from his face. His hands shook. He looked at me. I set my fork down. I filed, I said evenly. Termination of residency, asset protection, financial separation. His sister gasped. His mother stood up. You can't just... I can, I said, standing. And I did, 3 days ago. Daniel stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. You planned this, he whispered. I met his gaze. No, I said softly. I listened. I picked up my bag from the chair where I'd placed it hours earlier. Dinner was lovely, I added. I'll give you space to process. I walked out of my own house with my head high, and for the first time in weeks, I breathed. I didn't drive far. Just to the small park 3 streets over, the one with the cracked walking path and the bench that always smelled faintly of pine and old rain. I parked under a street lamp, turned off the engine, and sat there with my hands resting calmly on the steering wheel. My phone started lighting up almost immediately. Daniel, then his mother, then Daniel again. No voicemails, just rapid-fire calls, like volume could undo paperwork. I didn't answer. I stayed there long enough for the shock inside that dining room to curdle into panic, long enough for Daniel to realize this wasn't a threat, or a conversation starter, or a misunderstanding he could charm his way out of. This was done. I spent the night at a hotel 10 minutes away. Nothing fancy. Clean sheets, neutral walls, silence that didn't ask anything of me. The next morning, Marianne called. Reaction? She asked. Predictable, I said. Lots of calls, no accountability. She exhaled softly. Good. That means we controlled the first narrative. By noon, Daniel's lawyer had reached out. A rushed email. Too many exclamation points. Too much emotion. He was scrambling. By that evening, Daniel finally texted instead of calling. Daniel, B, please, you blindsided me. We need to talk. Daniel, you didn't even give me a chance to explain. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed, Beatrice, you explained everything already. You just didn't think I was listening. I didn't send anything else. The next few days were a slow unraveling. Daniel's mother left me a voicemail. Long, tearful, switching between apology and accusation like she couldn't decide which tactic would work. You've always been sensitive, she said at one point. You took things the wrong way. No, I took them accurately. Daniel tried a different angle. Flowers showed up at the house, my house. The neighbor texted me a photo of the bouquet sitting awkwardly on the porch like a bribe with roots. A note was attached. We can fix this. I forwarded the image to Marianne. Her reply came back fast. Do not respond. He's testing boundaries. By Wednesday, the forensic report was officially submitted. Daniel's hidden account. 3 years of deposits. Clear intent. His lawyer pivoted immediately. No more talk of compensation. No more suggestions of shared property. Just damage control. Daniel finally caught me outside the house Thursday evening. I'd gone back briefly, with police presence, to retrieve a few personal items. He looked smaller, less certain. You didn't have to do it like this, he said quietly. I closed the trunk of my car. Yes, I replied. I did. His jaw tightened. I was going to leave anyway. I know, I said. You just didn't expect to leave empty-handed. That's when the anger finally surfaced. You think you're better than me now? He snapped. You think this makes you powerful? I looked at him, not with triumph, not with bitterness. Just clarity. No, I said, it makes me safe. He didn't have an answer for that. The next week, the agreement came through. Daniel would vacate the property permanently. No claim on the house, no financial support, only what was legally his, and nothing more. He signed, quietly, without ceremony. The night the final paperwork was filed, I went home alone. I cooked dinner, not because I was hungry, but because I could. I sat at my table in silence that didn't ache, silence that settled. A month later, I ran into Daniel's sister at the grocery store. She hesitated, then said, You've changed. I met her eyes. No, I said, you just finally saw me clearly. Daniel texted once more after that, late, emotional. I don't know who I am without you. I didn't reply, because the truth is, I finally knew exactly who I was without him. And I didn't miss the woman he thought was too nice to fight. I missed the woman who learned when to stop explaining and start ending things. People expect endings to be loud. They expect slammed doors, final arguments, last words that echo. Movies train us to believe closure arrives with fireworks or fury. Mine didn't. Mine arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Daniel signed the final agreement, when I stood barefoot in my kitchen and realized I no longer flinched at the sound of my phone vibrating on the counter. That's how I knew it was over. Not because he stopped calling, though he did. Not because the paperwork was finalized, though it was. But because my body stopped bracing for impact. The first few days after Daniel moved out, the house felt hollow. Not empty, just unclaimed. Like it was waiting to remember who it belonged to. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let it sit. I slept diagonally across the bed. I left dishes in the sink without apologizing to anyone. I turned the TV off halfway through shows because I didn't feel like finishing them. Small freedoms. quiet ones. Marianne called to confirm everything was officially closed. He didn't contest, she said. Not after the account disclosure. His lawyer advised him to walk away clean. Good, I replied. She paused. You handled this well. I thought about that after we hung up. Handled it well. What she meant was, I didn't beg. I didn't unravel. I didn't let someone else define the story of my life. That weekend, I went through the house room by room. Not to erase Daniel, but to reclaim myself. I moved the couch back to where I originally wanted it, took his framed photos down from the hallway, cleared out a drawer in the kitchen that had quietly become his territory. In the garage, I found a box he'd labeled miscellaneous. Inside were things he'd meant to take and forgot. An old hoodie, a broken watch, a folded piece of paper. I unfolded it. It was a note written months ago, never given. B, I feel like I'm disappearing next to you. You don't need me the way I need to feel needed. I read it once, then again, and finally understood something that untangled the last knot in my chest. Daniel didn't betray me because I was weak. He betrayed me because I was stable, because I didn't orbit him, because I didn't panic, because my life didn't collapse without his validation. And instead of rising to meet that, he tried to take from it. I shredded the note and threw it away. Some explanations arrived too late to matter. A few weeks later, I ran into Daniel's mother at a coffee shop. She froze when she saw me, then straightened her back, as if rehearsed dignity could rewrite the past. I never thought you'd do something like that, she said. I stirred my coffee slowly. I know, I replied. That's why it worked. She didn't sit down, didn't apologize, just nodded, tight-lipped, and walked out. And that was fine, because closure doesn't require agreement. It requires acceptance. On a quiet Sunday evening, I sat on the porch with a glass of wine, watching the sky turn amber and then blue. The house behind me felt solid, not because it was built well, but because it finally reflected the person living inside it. Daniel texted one last time a month later. I really did love you. I just didn't know how to stand next to you. I stared at the message. Then I deleted it. Because love that requires you to shrink isn't love. It's fear wearing a familiar face. I don't hate him. I don't wish him harm. I just no longer carry him. And if there's one thing I learned through all of this, it's this. You don't have to raise your voice to be powerful. You don't have to fight to be dangerous. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is listening quietly, preparing carefully, and walking away while the person who underestimated you is still smiling.